far in this project management class, we've talked about defining our goals, doing some research, gathering, and last week we talked about planning, and you really can't get a plan together without putting together a budget. So today we're going to talk about budgeting. Budgeting is the process of creating a plan to spend your money. Creating this spending plan allows you to determine in advance whether you will have enough money to do the things that you want to do. Budgeting is something that I personally was initially terrible at. In fact, me and my family had gotten ourselves into significant debt on multiple occasions. It often seemed as if we'd made enough money but somehow didn't have enough to spend when it really mattered. I realized quickly that I didn't have a natural inclination towards wise spending habits or even planned spending habits. So I began to use a budget extensively, planning things out annually and reconciling that budget weekly. Doing so has completely turned around my financial outlook both personally and organizationally at our church. Now I know exactly what's coming in and going out well in advance, all thanks to budgeting. So the basics of budgeting boils down to balancing your expenses with your income. If your income and expenses don't balance and you spend more than you make, you're going to run into problems. Many people don't even realize that they spend more than they earn and slowly sink deeper and deeper into debt year after year. Projecting or forecasting your budget will also show you whether or not you'll have enough money to do all the things that you want to do. So that's what we're going to do this week. We're going to project and forecast a budget for your startup. Let's get started. First off, I believe the first step in a healthy budget is prayer. God is the source of every good and perfect gift. He is our provider, and He also promises to give us wisdom when we ask for it. More so, I firmly believe that our budgeting should have God's Word, His specific spoken direction and instruction for us as a starting point. Meaning, often we first look at how much money we have coming in and then decide how we're going to spend it. And to me, this approach is backwards and extremely limiting when budgeting. When we do this, we're actually allowing money to dictate our decisions, and if money decides our actions, then technically it is Lord of our lives. Instead, I believe we should first ask God, what would you like us to do? And once we have clear direction, then we figure out how much it will cost to accomplish that goal, and then lastly solve the problem of how to fund it. This approach may seem unconventional to most, but it requires faith, as your dream is usually going to outreach your bank account. So first off, pray. Once you have direction and you actually start planning your budget, I want you to identify the fixed costs. Fixed costs are expenses that are charged at the same price each month. As you can imagine, incorporating these is far and away the easiest part of creating a budget for your business or ministry or startup. Review past bank statements or profit and loss sheets. Do some research on other businesses and ministries to find out what expenses you can count on month to month. These could be things like a rent or a mortgage payment, utilities such as phone, water, trash, electricity, internet, etc. Could be salaries. You may have fixed monthly fees or taxes. You may have web hosting or accounting, legal or insurance payments. All of these are fixed costs as long as they remain the same on a month-to-month basis. Next up are the items that you don't have a fixed price tag for each month. These are called variable costs or variable expenses. Many of these purchases can actually be scaled up or down depending on the state of your business using your monthly profits. Your profit each month will be determined by the earnings that you're left with after paying all of your costs. So if your business does better than you forecasted, you can use extra funds to increase variable spending, enabling you to grow more or faster. Variable expenses would be things like materials or supplies, if you have hourly wages that you pay or contract work, commission-based pay, advertising, marketing costs, maybe even transportation and travel. And the final expense items are what we call capital items. The best perk of creating a budget is that you're able to factor in these one-time purchases better than you ever did before. While some of these items may come up unexpectedly, like maybe you need to purchase a laptop to replace one that's broken, other things can be budgeted for months in advance, like a business retreat that you've been thinking about. And this type of capital item budgeting protects your business from financial burden down the road. So these one-time items might be things like furniture, tech, software, events, things like that. The final element of a good business budget is figuring out how much money you bring in on a monthly basis. Start with projecting your sales figures first, and then go further by adding other income sources you use to run your business. Maybe earnings, sales, investors, loans, savings, and other sources of income. So once you've identified your fixed expenses, your variable expenses, and your capital expenses, you're going to pull it all together. The first 4 steps of this detail the elements of a good business budget. So the last step is just to bring all of that information and actually put it together. I've provided a template so that you can rough out an annual budget to run your startup. And once complete, once you finished it, go through it again and refine it. Maybe even take a third pass at it and refine it even more. You can do things like factor in some slack. Maybe there's a line item that you want to put in there of unexpected expenses. You can also look for areas where you can cut costs. Or if you have outside vendors or contractors, maybe you need to shop around to find better prices. Once complete, you should have an annual operations budget. This can be used right off the bat alongside of your business plan to pitch this idea to investors or team members. But if done thoroughly enough, you can actually use this on a day-to-day operations for your startup. Budgeting is an essential aspect to launching and sustaining a healthy startup, and so I hope that you can get this thing nailed down. So over the next few days, I want you to figure out all of the fixed expenses, all of the variable expenses, and all of the capital items that you would need to get your startup launched for year 1. I want you to compile all of those into the template provided, and then when we meet up next time, we're going to share about what we've come to.